A single insult has detonated a geopolitical firestorm.
A single insult has
From
detonated
Washington
a
to Tehran,
geopolitical
rhetoric
firestorm.
has turned razor-sharp and
From
openly
Washington
violent.
to Tehran, rhetoric
Iran's
has
military
turned
and
razor-sharp
parliament
and
are
openly
now issuing
violent.
threats
Iran's
that
military
echo
and
far
parliament
beyond
are now
words.
issuing
What
threats that
began
echo
as a
far
verbal
beyond
clash
words.
is now being framed
What began as a
line
verbal
that
clash
must
is now
not be
being
crossed.
framed as a line
The
that must
confrontation
not be
began
crossed.
with words sharp, personal,
The confrontation
and public.
began with words,
President Donald
sharp,
Trump
personal,
called
and
Iran's
public.
Supreme Leader Ali
President
Khamenei
Donald
a
Trump
sick
called
man,
Iran's
openly
Supreme Leader
questioning his
Ali
legitimacy
Khamenei a sick
and
man,
urging new
openly
leadership
questioning
in
his
Tehran.
legitimacy and urging
In
new
Iran's
leadership
political
in Tehran.
system,
In
the Supreme
Iran's
Leader
political
is not
system,
just a
the
figurehead.
Supreme Leader is
He
not
is the
just a
core of
figurehead.
authority,
He is the
military,
core of
religious,
authority,
and symbolic.
military,
Iran's
religious, and
response was
symbolic.
swift and unmistakably violent in
Iran's
tone.
response was swift
Brigadier
and
General
unmistakably
Abu Faisal
violent in
Shikati,
tone.
a senior military
Brigadier
official,
General Abu
issued a
Faisal
warning
Shikati,
directly
a
aimed
senior
at
military
Washington.
official, issued
If a
a
hand
warning
is raised
directly
against
aimed
our
at
leader,
Washington.
he said,
If a hand is
"It will be
raised
cut
against
off,
our leader,"
and their
he said,
world set
"it will
on
be
fire."
cut off, and their world
He
set
stressed
on fire."
this was not a
He
slogan.
stressed this was not a
Shiki
slogan.
went further. In the
Shikati
event
went
of any
further.
attack,
In the event of
Iran
any
would
attack,
leave no
Iran would
safe
leave
place
no safe
for its
place for its
enemies.
enemies. The statement was broadcast by state media, signaling it carried institutional weight, not personal bluster. The message was deterrence through fear.
The message was deterrence through fear.
Then came Parliament.
Parliament.
Iran's National Security
Iran's
Commission
National
declared that
Security
any
Commission
threat to the Supreme
declared
Leader
that any
would be
threat to the
treated as a
Supreme
declaration
Leader
of war,
would be treated
not
as
just
a
on
declaration
Iran,
of war,
but on the
not
Islamic
just
world.
on Iran,
The
but
Commission
on the
warned
Islamic
that such an affront could
The
trigger
Commission
jihad
warned
rulings
that
by
such an
religious
affront
scholars
could trigger
and
jihad
responses from
rulings
soldiers
by
of
religious
Islam
scholars
worldwide.
and responses from soldiers of Islam worldwide.
This is not routine rhetoric.
This is not
By invoking
routine
jihad
rhetoric.
and
By
global
invoking
response,
jihad and
Tehran
global
elevated
response,
a political
Tehran
dispute.
A
elevated
stunning and
political
explosive
dispute
prediction
into a
is now raising
civilizational
alarms
warning.
across the Middle East
It
and
reframes
Washington.
Trump's comments not as criticism, but as
A
provocation.
former U.S.
with
ambassador
religious
to
and
Israel
military
is warning that
consequences.
President Donald Trump
A
may
stunning
attempt to
and
assassinate
explosive
Iran's
prediction
supreme
is
leader,
now raising
Ayatollah
alarms
Ali
across the Middle
Khamenei,
East
as early
and
as next
Washington.
week.
A former U.S. ambassador to Israel is warning that President Donald Trump may attempt to assassinate
Dan Shapiro,
Iran's
who
Supreme
served as
Leader,
U.S. ambassador to
Ayatollah
Israel
Ali
under
Khamenei,
President Barack
as early as
Obama,
next week.
made the claim in a post
Dan
on X,
Shapiro,
pointing to
who served
rising
as
tensions
US
between
ambassador
Washington
to
and
Israel
Tehran.
Under President Barack Obama,
The warning comes
made
after
the claim
Iran's supreme
in a
leader
post on
blamed
X,
President Trump
pointing
for
to rising
fueling violence
tensions
during weeks
between
of mass
Washington and
anti-government
Tehran.
protests across
The warning
Iran.
comes after Iran's Supreme Leader
Trump, in a
blamed
recent
President
interview,
Trump
said
for
Iran
fueling
needs new
violence
leadership
during
and
weeks
described the
of mass
86-year-old
anti-government
Khamenei as a
protests
sick man.
across Iran.
Shapiro
Trump, in a
wrote that
recent
Trump's
interview,
remarks,
said
combined with what he
Iran
called
needs new
Khamenei's
leadership
provocative
and
messaging on
described
social
the
media,
86-year-old
suggests that
Khamenei
U.S.
as a
Iran's
sick man.
supreme leader would not
Shapiro
equal
wrote that
regime
Trump's
change.
remarks
He warned
combined
that
with
Khamenei's
what he
death
called
would
Khan's
likely lead to an
provocative
immediate
messaging on
takeover
social
by
media
Iran's Islamic
suggests
Revolutionary
the
Guard
US
Corps,
president
resulting
could
in a government
authorize
that
a
remains
direct
aggressive
strike
and
on
deeply
Iran's
repressive.
top leader. Shapiro
Shapiro
noted
stressed that
a
lasting
US
change in
carrier
Iran
strike
would
group
not
is
come from a
expected to
single
arrive
military
in the
strike.
Middle East
He
soon,
wrote that true regime
potentially
change
giving
will only be
Washington
authored
the
by the
military
Iranian people
capability
themselves
to launch
and would require
major strikes
sustained
inside
international
Iran
support,
and
largely through
defend
non-military
against any
means.
Iranian retaliation.
Shapiro
Trump's
served as
comments
U.S.
to
ambassador.
Politico
Suddenly,
on
it
needing
didn't
new
happen.
leadership in
A
Iran,
U.S. strike on
and
Iran
Khamenei's
was
mind
widely
painted of
reported
Trump
as
on
imminent.
X
Threats
lead
were
me to
flying
believe
and
that Trump
military
is going to
options
try
were
to kill the
openly
Supreme
discussed.
Leader
But
this
at the
week.
last moment,
There will soon
President
be
Donald
a
Trump pulled
US
back,
carrier strike
claiming
group
the decision
in
was
the
his
Middle
alone.
East, making
Now
it
Tehran
easier
is firing
for the
back
US
with
to
fury,
carry out
accusing
extensive
Washington of
strikes
plotting
in
to
Iran
swallow Iran
and be
itself.
prepared to defend against any Iranian
For days,
response
the
strikes.
signal from Washington was
Taking that
unmistakable.
shot at Khamenei,
Military action
perhaps
against Iran
combined
was
with strikes
openly
on
discussed as
IRGC
unrest ripped
and
through
Boss
Iranian
Siege
cities
Command
and security
and
forces
control
cracked
nodes
down with
would
deadly
allow Trump
force.
to say
Reuters
he is
reported a
keeping
U.S.
faith
strike was
with
imminent,
Iranian
and regional
protesters.
allies
He
braced for
encouraged
impact.
and fulfilling his threat
Then
to make the
came the
regime
reversal.
pay
Asked
for massacring
directly
them.
whether foreign leaders
According to
intervened,
Shapiro,
Trump rejected the
US
premise
could
outright.
also carry
He
out
said no
broader
Arab
attacks
state,
on
no Israeli
Iranian military
official,
forces.
no ally changed
He
his
said
mind.
such
He
actions
did.
would allow Trump
The
to
trigger,
claim
Trump
he is
said, was
standing
Iran's
by
sudden
Iranian
decision to halt halt mass executions of detained protesters. Hundreds of hangings allegedly planned, then abruptly canceled.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced
convinced
groups
myself.
and international
You had
observers
yesterday
say
scheduled
thousands
over
have been
800
killed
hangings.
during
They
the
didn't
recent
hang anyone.
unrest.
They canceled the hangings.
However,
that had a big
Shapiro
impact.
cautioned that
The
killing
unrest
Iran's
inside
supreme
Iran has
leader
been
would not
relentless.
equal
What began
regime
as
change.
protests over economic
He warned
hardship
that KA's
spiraled
death
into
would
nationwide
likely lead
anti-government
to an immediate
demonstrations.
takeover by
Activist groups
Iran's
say
Islamic
hundreds have been killed,
Revolutionary Guard
thousands
Corps,
detained, and
resulting in a
information
government
throttled
that
as the
remains
government
aggressive
cut internet
and
access
deeply
across the
repressive.
country.
Shapiro
Trump
stressed
publicly told
that
protesters
lasting
help
change
is on
in
its way,
Iran would
but
not
the
come
missiles never
from a
came.
single military strike.
Iran's
He wrote
supreme
that true
leader did
regime
not
change
welcome restraint
will
with
only be
gratitude.
authored by the
Ayatollah
Iranian
Ali
people
Khamenei
themselves
accused the
and would
United
require
States of
sustained
orchestrating the
international
unrest
support,
itself, calling it
largely
an American
through non-military
sedition,
means.
not a spontaneous
Shapiro
uprising.
served
He
as
said
US
Washington's goal
ambassador
was
to
not
Israel
reform,
from
but domination,
2011
accusing the
until
U.S.
early
of seeking to swallow
2017,
Iran
and
entirely.
later held senior Middle East policy
Khamenei
roles
went further,
under
calling the
President Joe
U.S.
Biden.
president a criminal,
The world
blaming Washington
stood
for
on the edge of
casualties,
another
destruction,
Middle East war,
and what he called
and then
slander
suddenly,
against the
it didn't
Iranian
happen.
nation. He framed the
US
crisis
strike
not
on
as
Iran
Trump's
was
policy,
widely
but as a
reported
permanent
as imminent.
American strategy,
Threats were
regardless
flying,
of
and military options were openly discussed. But at the last moment, President Donald
planning
Trump
things
pulled
out,
back,
taking
claiming
action.
the decision was his alone. Now Tehran is firing back
The
with
goal
fury,
of the
accusing
Americans,
Washington
let
of
me
plotting to swallow
quickly
Iran itself.
interject here,
For days,
based on my
the signal from
extensive
Washington
experience and
was
several years
unmistakable.
spent within the Islamic
Military
Republic, I
action
must
against
state this
Iran
clearly.
was
America's
openly discussed
ultimate
as
goal is
unrest
to completely
ripped through
devour
Iranian
Iran.
cities, and security forces cracked down with deadly force. Reuters reported a U.S. strike was imminent, and regional allies braced for impact. Then came the reversal.
There is no
Asked
God but
directly
Allah. There
whether
is no
foreign
God but
leaders
Allah. There
intervened,
is no God but
Trump
Allah. From the very
rejected the
beginning of the
premise
revolution
outright.
until this very
He
day,
said no
the
Arab
oppressive
state,
dominance
no
that they had
Israeli
maintained
official,
over our
no
country,
ally
by the hands of the
changed his
people,
mind.
by the hands of the
He
youth,
did.
by the hands of all
The trigger,
segments of the
Trump
people
said,
throughout the
was
entire
Iran's
nation,
sudden
under the
decision
leadership of the
to
great
halt
Imam.
mass
This
executions
dominance was
of
completely
detained
eradicated.
protesters.
From the
Hundreds of
very
hangings
beginning, they've been
allegedly
planning to bring
planned,
this back.
then abruptly cancelled. Did
They
Arab
have
and
once
Israeli
again
officials
placed
convince
Iran
you to not
under
strike
their
Iran?
military, political,
Nobody
and
convinced me.
economic
I convinced
domination.
myself.
This
You had
objective
yesterday
isn't
scheduled
about
over
the
800
current
hangings.
U.S.
They
president,
didn't hang
mind
anyone.
you.
They
It's not
cancelled the
about the
hangings.
person
That
who is
had a big
president
impact.
right now.
The
This
unrest
is about
inside
American
Iran has been
policy.
relentless. What began as protests
This is
over
America's
economic
policy.
hardship
A
spiraled
country
into
possessing these
nationwide
particular
anti-government
characteristics
demonstrations.
situated in such a
Activist
critical
groups
geographical
say hundreds have
location,
been killed, thousands detained,
with all these
and
facilities
information
available,
throttled
with such a
as the
vast
government
expanse,
cut
and with this
internet
huge
access
population.
across the country. Trump
They are
publicly
simply
told
unable to
protesters
tolerate
help
such a
is on
country
its way,
with this kind of
but the
progress.
missiles never came.
The progress that
Iran's
is being
supreme
made
leader did not
scientifically and
welcome restraint with
technologically
gratitude.
in various sectors.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accused the United
This is
States
not
of
tolerable for
orchestrating
an
the unrest
American.
itself.
We
calling it
consider the
an
President
American
of the
sedition,
United States to be
not
a criminal, both
spontaneous
for the
uprising.
casualties and
He
for
said
the
Washington's
damages.
goal was not reform,
Also because of the
but
insult he
domination,
dealt to the Iranian
accusing
nation.
the U.S. of seeking to swallow Iran entirely. Khamenei went further, calling the U.S. president a criminal, blaming Washington for casualties, destruction, and what he called slander against the Iranian nation. He framed the crisis not as Trump's policy, but as a permanent American strategy,
We strongly advise you to
regardless
retreat
of who
immediately. Do not
occupies
advance a
the
single step
White
beyond this
House.
point. If we really get going, we won't have any discussion
my
about
Lord,
ceasefires and such.
no God but
We are
Allah.
telling you quite frankly
Firstly,
right now, these
what
blows
is
you
the
have
nature
struck,
of
these
this
extensive
sedition?
damages you have caused
The
over
American
the past 50 years,
sedition.
all the
Planning
decency and
things out,
considerable patience
taking
you have shown,
action.
you are simply not
The
paying
goal
any
of the
attention to it.
Americans, let me
If we were
quickly
to once again
interject
find
here.
ourselves in that era
Based
of
on
the
my
Holy Defense,
extensive experience
specifically the
and
war
several
from
years spent
from
within
its
the
second year
Islamic
onward,
Republic,
then you
I
can
must
be
state
absolutely
this
certain
clearly.
that very serious problems
America's
will emerge
ultimate
for you.
goal is to
You must
completely
stop right
devour
here, turn back.
Iran.
The Iranian
There is
nation
no
is a
God.
highly discerning and noble
There is
people,
no
not
God
seeking war.
but Allah.
But if it reaches
There
a
is no
point
God
where it
but
becomes
Allah.
necessary to
There is
finish
no
the
God
task
but
and
Allah.
other events unfold,
From the very
we will
beginning
still
of the
preserve our
revolution
brotherhood and
until
friendship
this
with
very
Saudi
day,
Arabia, with
the
the
oppressive
Emirates,
dominance
with Bahrain, with
that
Qatar,
they had maintained
with Turkey,
over
and
our
with
country
Iraq.
by the
But no
hands of
base
the
of
people,
yours in these countries
by the
will
hands
ever
of
be
the
safe.
youth,
They don't
by the
seem to
hands of
realize
all
that Iran
segments
is
of the
just
people
like Russia's snow.
throughout the
further
entire
Trump
nation
pushes forward, the worse
under
his
the
situation
leadership
becomes.
of the
If
great
he had only
Imam.
stepped aside after that.
This dominance was complete.